The month of May was a very good reading month, even though I spent half of it spinning my wheels. I read a lot of short fiction and yet again partial books with eyes on paper, and I really struggled with that, but I read some very good stuff in May, and we're just going to dive right into it. I started off, as one should, with a Travis McGee book, so I read Nightmare in Pink for the third time in less than 2 years. It's outstanding. Still one of my favorite books in the entire series. This one is special because it's got a lot of psychological thriller stuff in it. There's still action, but man, this book feels different than the other McGee novels, and it is at a breakneck pace. I forgot how much ground this book covers, and I think it's the shortest book in the series. Very good. Highly recommend it. Maybe not as your first McGee novel, but it can definitely be your second. Toward the end of April, I started reading This is Free Trader Beowulf, A System History of Traveler by Shannon Appelkline. I'll get to that in a little while. And it got me locked back in to science fiction, especially military science fiction. I read Terms of Enlistment last month and loved it, and it just re-sparked my love of science fiction. It's been a while since I've been hooked on it. I realized after the month was over and after I had filmed my wrap-up last month that I didn't read any fantasy last month. And depending on your definition of fantasy, I also read no fantasy in May. This has been like a fantasy-less year so far. 3 out of the 5 months, I have not read any fantasy, which I didn't think would ever happen again. So let's get into what kept that science fiction train rolling, and that was Live Suit by James S.A. Corey. It is book 1.5 in the Captives War series, first book being The Mercy of Gods. Well, Live Suit takes place not really in between book 1 and book 2, but it is a story that really helps explain some of the things happening in book 2, which I'll get to in a minute. Live Suit is fantastic. You could read Live Suit without reading either of the full novels in the Captives War series. It is a very good standalone, and it ties into a book I read later in the month, which was Armor by John Stakely, because Live Suit is about these human soldiers who are put into like a symbiotic suit that completely encases them. They no longer have to eat. All the plumbing is being worked through by this system, and they have like this little hump on their back that is where, I don't know, all the stuff goes or something, and it'll store ammo. It gives them super strength and speed, reaction times. It can put drugs into their system to keep them alive. And these suits are what this story is about. And you're following one POV character as they have flashbacks to all the events that they have witnessed in this suit, the traumatic battles they fought, the people they've interacted with between missions, stuff like that. It is very creepy. It's so good. One of the things I do not like in a lot of storytelling is the jumping forwards and backwards in time, but it works so well here. I didn't even notice it was happening until halfway through the novella. And yes, it's a novella. It's very short. I think it works as a good introduction to the series. So after that, of course, I dove right into The Faith of Beasts, the second book in the Captives War series by James S.A. Corey. It's wonderful. It is just as good as the first one. When I described The Mercy of Gods, I described it as just steady. Like the pacing is the same all the way through. There are points of conflict. It has a way of pacing the story that I just don't see a lot in any genre. And The Faith of Beasts is the same way. There's like this build up through the whole thing, and it's just steady, and it's just so interesting. And this is just carrying on the story from the first one. In the first book, these aliens attack and conquer this planet with humans on it. But these aren't humans from Earth. Well, they might have been from Earth. We don't know. But Earth is lost at this point. It's barely even mentioned. There's a lot of influence from Earth on the societies on this planet. It is made known very early in the first book, and then emphasized in the second one, that the humans weren't native to the planet they were on that was conquered by these aliens. And the scientists from the first book are still around and doing science stuff for these alien overlords on their like capital planet is the best way to put it, and it is fantastic. I don't know how to explain more because it's the second book in a series, so how do I talk about it much without spoiling a bunch of stuff from the first one? I think that reading Live Suit is almost mandatory before reading this one. I hate saying that because I don't like when a novella is needed to make a story better. I say it's mandatory, but it's probably not. I will just say that the experience of reading The Faith of Beasts was elevated for me because I had just read Live Suit, and I guess we can leave it at that. Book real good. Please check out that series. There's going to be another 0.5 book, I think, and then the final book. I think they said it's supposed to just stay as a trilogy. They don't want it to be something that drags on forever, so we'll see. After that one, I needed a palate cleanser. I wanted some fun. I wanted something short. I read Jimmy the Kid, Dortmunder Book 3. This thing is a work of genius. It has the goofiest and best executed like meta fiction that I've ever read. So the premise of Jimmy the Kid, which is Dortmunder book 3, is about a robbery. That's what Dortmunder does. He does robberies. They usually go bad. These are very funny caper novels that are just a ton of fun. The first one is about Dortmunder getting out of jail and his buddy convincing him to steal this jewel to give to this other African nation because they claim that it's theirs and the other one claims it's theirs, and they used to be a united country, and since they've split, there's like this feud between who has the rights to the jewel, and so they're paid to steal it. It is absurd. It is so fun. And the second one, Bank Shot, which I adored, is about them stealing a bank. Not from the bank, stealing the bank. It's like a mobile home parked in front of the bank while the bank is being renovated, and so they have to steal the whole bank to get the loot. And it's so funny. Well, Jimmy the Kid is even better than those first two. So to give a little context, Donald E. Westlake is also Richard Stark, and he, under the Richard Stark pen name, he wrote the Parker series. And I've read the first Parker book, and Parker is just this brutal, borderline psychopath that gets the job done, does a robbery, gets paid, that kind of thing. And the first book was about him getting payback from the people that betrayed him on his last big job before he was left for dead. It's very good, but man, it's like too brutal. And Dortmunder is the extreme opposite, which I think is why Donald E. Westlake put it under his actual name. People would not know what happened to Richard Stark's brain if he wrote Richard Stark's name was on top of a Dortmunder novel. Well, in Jimmy the Kid, Dortmunder's buddy is like, hey, I got a really good idea for another job. And Dortmunder's like, I'm never doing a job with you again. What do you mean you have a good idea for a job? This conversation's not happening. And he's like, hey, no. I didn't do anything wrong in those last few jobs. Both jobs were that dude's idea. He says, hey, I've got this foolproof plan. And I read it in a Richard Stark novel. And so you're immediately like, wait, did Donald E. Westlake put his own book in here? Well, it's a Richard Stark Parker novel that doesn't actually exist. So the entire premise of Jimmy the Kid is built on using this Richard Stark novel as a guide on how to commit a specific crime. They're going to kidnap a rich kid. And so he starts convincing the whole crew to read it. And they're like, it's okay. Everyone's like, yeah, it's really good. And I'm like, is Donald E. Westlake really putting reviews of his own work in this? And there's a bunch of jabs at like crime writing in this book. It's so funny. I had such a great time. He alludes to the Parker books and other crime fiction in here in such an interesting way I've never seen anywhere else. Yet again, I mean, I keep saying that in other books, like I've never seen them do this before. You know, that's wonderful. It's great to see that an author can tread new ground on a very worn path, like the worn path being the crime caper. It's so fun. Jimmy the Kid, the actual kid, is great. This is the best Dortmunder novel so far. I highly recommend it to anyone. Yes, you should read the first two because they're great, but man, you really got to read Jimmy the Kid. And you do get bonus points if you've read a Richard Stark novel beforehand, because there are passages in here that are from the fake Richard Stark novel. And it's just so crazy to see Donald E. Westlake writing Richard Stark because they're the same person. I just think it's so funny that it's in a Dortmunder novel. After that, I finished This is Free Trader Beowulf, A System History of Traveler. This is a big, wonderful book that is just about the history of the game Traveler. Traveler was the first very popular science fiction tabletop RPG. It's not the first science fiction tabletop RPG, just happened to be really big, and it came out at just the right time. It blew up right when Star Wars came out, but it's not science fantasy like Star Wars. It's very traditional military science fiction and space operas, and it is a very cool game. I haven't got to play it yet. I want to, and reading the system history was so fun. I love Shannon Appleklein's writing, and to have all these wonderful pictures of all the different books and box sets and everything else that was made for Traveler is really cool. And it was cool to see Shannon Appelklein talk about what influenced Traveler and how Traveler influenced the greater tabletop RPG design world. I had a great time. I don't know anyone else that would want to read it, but if you have even a little bit of interest in Traveler or the history of a tabletop RPG, you will like this book. Reading it is what inspired me to read a couple of other books in this month and some stuff I already have queued up for June. I'll talk about that at the end. And let's just move on to my book of the month, and that's Upgrade of Horribles by Dungeon Crawler Carl. I've been waiting for this for over a year now. Finally came out. I listened to it in 2 days. I love it. I don't know why there are people people out there poo-pooing it, which there can't be very many because I'm looking at the Goodreads rating and it's like 4.7. So it's still real popular. It's still really good. Man, it is crazy to see the Dungeon Crawler Carl series just hit critical mass. Like, it is everywhere. You can buy shirts and Hot Topic with Carl on them. It's just so crazy. I mean, I was getting into the series right as the wave was going up, and man, it is still just climbing. The book is incredible. Jeff Hayes' narration, of course, is the best in the business, and I loved the pacing of this novel. It works as like a hard reset after this inevitable ruin, and it does a really good job of showing you that while Carl has gained a lot of ground in reaching for like some form of autonomy while being trapped in the dungeon, yeah, this book's just like, no, you didn't. You think you did? No, let's knock you down a peg or two is almost how this book feels. It's very good. Stuff gets real, and the premise of this one, without spoiling too much because you can literally see it on the cover, is the new dungeon level. It's like Mario Kart. Kind of. You have races where you go from one place to another, or Cannonball Run, that kind of thing. Or what I thought of the most was Twisted Metal, because these cars are equipped with just weapons and crazy gear to do all sorts of weird stuff, and you get upgrades and you're racing, and man, so good. My book of the month, Prison Pocket, is now like my favorite scene in the whole series. It's so bizarre, and that's all I'm going to say about that. If you haven't read Dungeon Crawler Carl, I don't know why you haven't. You should definitely give it a shot. And let's move on to my other nonfiction book of the month, and that was Inventing the Renaissance, The Myth of a Golden Age by Ada Palmer. Now, Ada Palmer is known for writing science fiction, and I decided to go full Not Like Other Girls and be like, I'm just going to read her nonfiction instead of her science fiction that everyone adores. I say that, but I will read the science fiction eventually. But I was really interested in a history book about the Renaissance, and Steve Donahue not too long ago mentioned it in one of his book haul videos and said that he really enjoyed it. And I thought, well, if he enjoyed it, then I am going to adore it. And I did. I think that it works best in small doses. If you're doing the audio, treat a chapter like a podcast episode and only do like one a day. Don't try to power through it. And if you're reading it, treat it like a short fiction anthology where you just read a chapter and then kind of do something else and then come back to it, because there's a lot of info there. And while the book works really well, it's still a decent sized nonfiction book, so it will melt your brain if you try to power through it. It's very good. It is her discussing why the Renaissance is and isn't all that it was cracked up to be. She talks about why we have such a heavy focus on the Renaissance being the thing that created modernity. And she says, yeah, a lot of that's true, but also a lot of that stuff was already started in the Middle Ages. And then a lot of stuff we attribute to the Renaissance was actually during the Enlightenment after the Renaissance. So it's a very good book, and she makes a lot of really good points. And then at one point she says, hey, don't listen to me. What do I know? And I love when a writer does that. And it's very good. That was on May 20th when I finished that book. And I was spinning my wheels for a while after that. I DNF'd a bunch of stuff on audio. I kept reading pulps and trying to start books, eyes on paper, and it just was not working. And I just felt burnt out, even though I really wanted to do more science fiction. And so I did A Purple Place for Dying, book 3 in the Travis McGee series, because, why not? I said I could read these once a week for the rest of my life. I wasn't lying. So A Purple Place for Dying is very good. It gets better the more times I read it. The first time I read it, I was like, this isn't as good as the first two, but that's just because the first two are incredible. And then when I read A Purple Place for Dying the second time, I thought, wow, this is a lot better than I remember. And this time, I just thought, yeah, this is exactly as good as I remembered from the second time. A Purple Place for Dying takes place in like New Mexico-ish. Doesn't quite say. It feels like very West Texas, New Mexico, maybe Arizona. It's got a Southwest feel to it. And Travis McGee is brought to this little town. This woman wants him to find evidence so she can divorce her husband and go off with her lover. And they're discussing this at a cabin in this remote little desert area. And she gets shot and killed from 400 meters away, something like that. Like the bullet hits her and he realizes it's a bullet before he hears it. It goes off from there. This book is a modern Western. This is as close to a Western story as you are going to get in the Travis McGee series. And the only way you can get closer to a Western from John D. MacDonald is by reading his Western pulps, which I have read one. It was really good. In that one, the main character used psychological trauma to push a guy to end himself, and he was the bad guy, and it's kind of crazy. Very interesting story. But let's get back to the modern Western, or 1960s Western, of A Purple Place for Dying. McGee is the stranger that comes into town. Law enforcement doesn't like him there. It involves like these rich dudes and just this corruption. Court, come here. Come on. This guy's been bad. Probably heard him screaming at some point. He had to go to jail. By jail, I mean put in a room with food and water and a cat box by himself, and he got lonely. But that's his, he has timeout sometimes because he can be bad. Goblins can get in trouble. Back to A Purple Place for Dying. It's a Western. Stranger comes to town. Law enforcement doesn't want him there. One of the rich guys is like, I'm hiring you for this job. You need to figure out what's going on. And, even before the dude hired him, McGee wasn't going to give up because he saw someone die right in front of him. And when he takes the police up there, they're like, there's no body here. There's not any blood. Like, what did she pay you to convince us that she died and that she's not coming back? Because we know she was going to run away with that dude. And he's like, she died right in front of me. And they're like, we don't believe you. So not only is he trying to prove that something happened to her, he's trying to get some justice for what happened to her, because McGee just won't let things go. And like I've said before, McGee is 100% an influence for the Reacher series, and you can see that in the whole bum lifestyle and can't let things go, has to solve the mystery, has to ensure that justice happens. So yeah, Purple Place for Dying. So good. Can't get enough of the McGee series, as you'll see in a minute. And after that, I read Armor by John Stakely. This book is good. This book has some very high highs and some very low lows when it comes to quality. They're not bottom of the barrel lows. I just think that at points, John Stakely's writing is too almost technical manual. It's too clean and sparse, which is a weird thing for me to say because I am obsessed with clean, efficient writing. But you've got to ride that line between efficient and not enough there to go off of. And I don't think that you lose anything in this writing. I just think that it doesn't have the impact that it should at points because it's a little flat, a little too lean. And it makes sense because you're getting the story from a soldier and it's described the way a soldier would describe. The character voice is there. I just think sometimes the story suffers because of it. What is this about, you might be thinking as I'm rambling on about the writing style? Armor is a classic military science fiction novel about a man in a suit of armor who is fighting aliens on this planet and they're bugs. Of course, it reminds me very much of Starship Troopers. It had to have been an influence on this book, but there's so much to this. This book is about the burden someone carries when they have dealt with this kind of combat again and again and again. The guy in the armor just won't die. And one of the reasons he refuses to die is because he flips a switch in combat and has what he refers to as the engine. The engine controls his movements. The engine makes him unkillable. And it's really fascinating because once the engine's gone, you have nothing between him and the atrocities that he has witnessed, and you see him breaking down psychologically. And then here's one of my problems with the story. It abruptly shifts to a different POV with a completely different style. And you're like, what just happened? I don't understand what's going on. And what's going on is this is the other main POV in the story. And it abruptly shifts to Jack Crow, who is a pirate, a rascal. I've seen someone mention online that he's Han Solo, which is kind of right. And he is escaping from this prison planet, and he gets in with these pirates, and these pirates are like, hey, there's this military base. We need to break into it because we are out of fuel for the FTL. Like, this next jump is our last one. We're jumping there. We need you to infiltrate this military basis, I don't know, a janitor or anything, and then we are going to take it over and get some fuel, and in reward I will give you this extra ship we have. And Jack's like, this captain is sus. The dude is like this big beefy bear of a dude who is like a jerk, and he's kind of left to sink or swim with the pirate crew, and so he's got to kind of live up to his legend while he's with them. And then he gets on this planet, and it's a frontier planet that happens to have a military base, and the planet is owned by a dude named Lewis, I think, and the dude's just drunk all the time and fishing. That's pretty much all he does. And the rules are no weapons, like no guns, you got to avoid violence, and then that's pretty much it. And this frontier town next to the military base has a bunch of refugees that are here because of the war that's been going on and all sorts of other things. And these people just want a place to live, a place to exist in a way they can't in the rest of the universe. And Jack infiltrates the military base. He becomes friends with the lead doctor, who's a young, genius working on really interesting stuff that Jack barely understands. And one of the things that he brought with him as like a kind of way to get in with the military base was a black suit of power armor that reminds you of the suit of armor being worn by the POV character in the first third or half of the book or whatever. And that is Chekhov's power armor. It will be important later in the story. And they start exploring this power armor and figure out that they can not tap into the video feed from the power armor, but they can essentially tap into the memories of who was wearing the armor. And I'm not going to go any further than that because that's like halfway through the book. It's not a huge spoiler, but I needed to get that out there because when they start tapping into the memories is when the book really takes off from the Jack POV, because the military sci-fi part of it with the guy in the armor is good. And then the beginning of the stuff with Jack is like, it's just narrative whiplash. And I don't want anyone to give up because when they start tapping into the memories of the armor, the book takes off and never slows down again. And it is magnificent. It has some of the most heartbreaking moments of dealing with trauma I've ever read in a book. And it's so good. And this book, it's just full of catharsis for dealing with the things that these characters have dealt with. I understand why it is considered a military science fiction classic, and I do recommend it to anyone that wants to be better versed in science fiction as a genre. And it does play into Live Suit a little bit. You have the same elements of the man underneath the armor in Armor as you do in Live Suit. I think they play well off one another, so if you happen to read them relatively close together like I did, you'll get a lot out of it. And the book's really good. I do knock it down a little just because of the jarring narration, and then sometimes the action scenes are either too terse in their style or too long, or sometimes both, which is not fun. But the book's not that long, and those scenes aren't that bad, so I highly recommend it to all the science fiction nerds out there. You got to add it to your TBR, and at least pretend you're going to read it someday. Then we'll both feel better. I was still spinning my wheels after that, so I started Deus Irae by Philip K. Dick and Roger Zelazny. It is a post-apocalyptic novel with a heavy emphasis on theology. I love me some post-apocalyptic stuff. I can do without any theology, and so all the theological discussions and stuff in it did not work for me. There's a very funny scene with an AI, but other than that, it's a really good book that I don't like, which is a really weird thing to say because you would think, oh, the book is good, which means I must have enjoyed it. No, the book is good. I did not enjoy it. I enjoyed parts of it, but overall, it is not a book for me. Now, I think a lot of people out there would enjoy it. The post-apocalyptic setting is very interesting. There was a guy that, I don't know, pushed the big red button or something, and most of civilization in the world was wiped out. There are these little enclaves all over the place. It is very a canticle for Leibowitz in some of the ways the story is told. You start out at this town in, I think, Utah, where there's like a religion that worships the guy who hit the big red button because he proved all the other religions wrong and that there was not a kind, gentle, caring God, and that at any time we could be destroyed. And it's way in the weeds with theology in a way that I don't care about and I don't care to explain. The main character is Tibor McMasters. He doesn't have arms or legs. It's like a genetic problem because of the bombs dropping, but he has like a wheelchair type thing, and he has these 6-fingered arms, like robotic arms that he controls, and he's a painter. He's a very good painter, and he is given the job to paint the likeness of the God of this church. But in order to do that, he has to go find him because he's still alive, or at least they think he's still alive, and he's in Los Angeles. And so the journey to Los Angeles was fine. I kind of got lost in it. I did enjoy the scene where he's talking to this shape-shifting avatar of this artificial intelligence that eats people for the, micro minerals in their blood and stuff. That was really bizarre, but it like the avatar of the AI is talking to him, and they're arguing over whether or not the AI is all-knowing because it can't answer a question that no one can answer. And Tibor is like, see, you're dumb, you're broken, you must have hard drives missing or something. And the AI is like, well, why don't you come down and see if the hard drives are missing? I can open the door and you can come into the bunker and see what needs to be repaired to fix me. And the guy's like, I'm not going to fall for that. And the AI, at one point, the AI is like, you should come down so I can consume you like I consumed the others. And it's like, wait, what? And then Tibor pulls out like a little derringer in his robotic arm, and he shoots the AI avatar that looks kind of like a woman, and it like ricochets off like its eye or something, like the scene from Superman Returns. The AI looks around and then just falls over like it died, and I'm like, what is happening here? This is ridiculous. I love that scene. And then the rest of the book it ain't for me, I guess is the best way to put it. I can think of quite a few people I know that would really enjoy it. So if you like post-apocalyptic novels and you like theological discussions and you are a fan of Philip K. Dick or Roger Zelazny, then you should read this book. If you don't like one of those two subgenres, then you are probably not going to like this book. Let's move on to the last thing I read, which was a reread of The Quick Red Fox. This book is still in like the bottom half of the McGee novels, but I do have to say it has some of the best lines in it. So the premise is this Hollywood starlet, very Marilyn Monroe-like, needs McGee to get back some photographs because she's being blackmailed, and she's being blackmailed for a second time over these same photos because she had this like swinger thing going on while she was on vacation away from work, and someone got a bunch of photographs of the things they were doing on the patio at this very nice, what they thought was private California home. And so she tries seducing McGee, and he's just like, no, this isn't going to work, kind of thing. Like, I might do this job, I might not. Well, she gives him her assistant to help him, and she has a lot of baggage. The way they work together and the way he kind of breaks her out of her shell is very well written. I think one of the reasons this story might not work best for me is it just feels very jaded about Hollywood in a way that is very accurate. So maybe that's my problem, is the book is just very good in a way that leaves me unsettled. Some of the really good quotes, like at one point, let me just read this line. "Love you," I said. "It doesn't cost a thing. Not when you do." That's such a beautiful little line because, you know, so much of McGee is built on, he's chasing after finding someone to love in this series, and it always goes bad, but he is still trying to connect with others. And it's really cool because in almost every book he's talking about that he doesn't get along with the 60s free love because he thinks that there should be more of a connection between people, and that, you know, saying I love you is thrown around too much, sleeping around is done too much. He wants there to be more than just a, hey, we did this, that was fun, never going to see you again, which I think ties heavily into his whole chivalric knight thing. Like, he is the modern knight in tin armor chasing windmills. I had to go get my handy dandy bedraggled notebook because I use this to take notes when I'm listening to audiobooks, and I got to look up a quote. This quote was used in the McGee nonfiction book. I can't remember. It's like Something America. I talked about it a couple months ago, and I really like it. It is such a great wording of the kind of jaded view that McGee has on the world. "Virginia dear, through the strange alchemy of the gods, there are a disproportionate number of kids coming along these days with IQs that are soaring toward a level too high to measure. These kids have very cold eyes. They are the ones who, one day, will stop playing with transistors, diodes, and microcircuitry and look at Barrentown and start asking the rude questions. Or build a machine that will ask." And it's like, hey man, you are alluding to artificial intelligence. Very interesting. "In the meanwhile, Virginia, Santa Rosita still exists, and it is as if some cynical genius had designed a huge complex penal colony in the sunshine, eliminating the need for guard towers and barbed wire by merely beaming a gigantic electronic message at the inmates, day and night, saying, 'You are in heaven. Be happy. If you can't be happy there, you can't be happy anywhere. Vote, consume, donate, and don't forget to use your number.'" And this was him talking about the suburbs in California. It's such a good line, and there's always lines like that. And I lost the line, but he has this very pulpy line that plays on itself in a way that the only other example I can give is Eminem with his lyricism in some of his songs, where there's just like layers to every single line. He did that in here in a way that you do tend to see in pulp magazines and pulp novels, but in almost a corny way. But he does it here, and it flows so well. It is the thing I adore about his writing, is his ability to layer things and play off of each line in a paragraph. It's so good. I so rarely see it in a writer that I now really understand why so many writers say John D. MacDonald is their favorite writer. And going through these books for a third time just really opens my eyes up to it. I've said it before, I'm an accuracy by volume reader. Like, I can read deeply into a text, but it does not work for me the way it does others. So I will read the same thing multiple times over, a couple years, or I will read the same author a lot in order to get a grasp on what they are trying to do. And this third read through of this book has really paid off. Man, I wish I could find that Laird line. It was so good. Should have put it in my notes. Should have wrote it in this little stupid ratty thing I keep in my back pocket. Like the pages on it are turning blue because it's in my blue jeans pocket. As I'm talking about this book, I know earlier I said that I thought it was in the bottom half of the series, but now I don't know because it has some of the best lines in it and it tells a story in a way that leaves me unsettled. So maybe this is one of the better ones. I know something I wanted to talk about. McGee is always talking about the facade over civilization and that, you know, underneath is this corruption and these people are wearing masks and they are fake. And I got another point after this too that I just remembered, but this one is about McGee's ability to flip a switch and use violence in a sudden way that leaves people helpless. And he feels terrible about it, but he still does it. There's a scene where he's got to question this dude. This dude's not going to cooperate with him. He tricks him into going outside and he sucker punches him in the stomach. It's like a liver shot / knocking the wind out of him. The dude thought he was dying. Like McGee takes him out, ties him up, throws him in the car, and he takes off driving like nothing's wrong. And then he picks this very large man up and throws him in the snow and starts questioning him, leaving the man feeling completely helpless. And McGee goes into like this internal monologue at one point about the damage he's done to that person. That guy's never going to feel the same again. Like he had his masculinity completely wiped out in one sudden punch and was left completely helpless. And McGee could tell the guy's kind of already skirting the line of things falling apart. He's like a ski instructor and he's just got this fake German accent and really he's just chasing girls and just trying to make a buck being the ski instructor at a lodge in upstate New York. McGee goes on this thing about how he's not going to be the same after this. And, you know, he does feel remorse, but he still does it. And that plays into him being confronted by the assistant that's helping him. And she asks him if he is addicted to discovering things, to the mystery, to uncovering stuff. And he says he is he almost doesn't want to admit it, but he knows it's true. And she asks him, like, how long can you do this before it destroys you? And it's such a fascinating thing to think about because so much of this series is built on how destructive the things are that McGee does, but no one else can or will do them. And a lot of the stuff he does is helping people who have been robbed. He is a Robin Hood that steals from thieves. It's so fascinating to see him confronted with his self-destructive nature because you see it in every single book. And he is such a good, terrible person. And it's really cool to just have that emphasized in a way that even my little dummy brain can figure out the third time through a book. It's just so great. I can't get over how wonderful these are. I know I need to make a video about the series itself, and I will probably do that before I read them all for the third time. We'll see. I just want to do it in a way that it's easy to watch for even people who haven't read the books, which is difficult. But yeah, that's all I read in the month of May. I don't even remember how many books that was. Let's see. It was 11 books, 3 rereads or something. My wife was making fun of me because I said, yeah, I read 11 books. And she's like, well, how many were rereads? And I'm like, hey, how dare you? It was a very good month. I mean, I had a lot of bangers in a row. I mean, let's see this. Going back to last month, it's kind of incredible. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 5-star books in a row. How's that even possible? Like, what do I have to do? Like downgrade a bunch of stuff to kind of even things out? I wouldn't do that. I just can't believe I had that many books I enjoyed that much, just all in a row. And I said this was a rough month, but it was more of a rough month because between some of these, I DNF'd books that were just not working for me or were bad. So yeah, it was a very good month with some speed bumps along the way is the best way to put it. Now, what is my reading going to be like in June? Well, it is June on the Range. I will be reading as many Westerns as I can. I will be trying to read Western adjacent stuff as well. I was reading part of a book last night that is a study of 31 different Zane Grey novels. I am hoping to read Wild Horse Mesa this month. I have that beautiful 1928 first edition hardcover, and I'm going to read a Louis L'Amour book, maybe a Max Brand book. I have Elmore Leonard's collection of Western short stories on audio. I might give a try. I'll be on a road trip, and I think that's a good place to kind of enjoy some short fiction. I'm currently reading some military science fiction. I've got an H. Beam Piper book I'm finishing up right now called Space Viking. It's pretty good. I'm going to try a couple of other like space operas because I'm all in on space operas again. Just having a great time with them. I'm reading a book that's a collection of essays, and the first one's about the fiction that influenced Traveler. What's crazy is I finished that, and like the very next essay is them talking about The Dying Earth by Jack Vance and Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe and The Black Grail, I think, something like that, which is another Dying Earth type story that I want to look up now. I knew nothing about it, and there's just all sorts of stuff I want to get to this month. We'll see what all I get to because I'm on vacation for like 12 days, so who knows what I'll actually do beyond chill and do as little as possible for my vacation. Let me know what you read in May. Let me know what you're going to be reading in June. Have you read any of these? Do you think Deus Irae is better than I do? Let me know. I'm still going to keep reading all of Roger Zelazny's books in order, even though 5 of the last 6 have been stinkers for me. You know, I'm not going to give up on reading his bibliography. I'll just keep chipping away. It's not a project, but it is a project kind of thing. And when it comes to videos for the channel, like I just put out like 3 or 4 in a week, which is really good for me. I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep up that pace, but I'm going to try. I got an interesting book in the mail that I'm going to save for a dedicated video, and I'll talk about that. Still reading a lot of pulps. I made a video about pulps. You should go check that out. They're free to read and they're very fun. I might start making that like a regular thing that I do because, you know, free books that don't have AI slop in them are very hard to find. And it's great to kind of dip into the well of pulp fiction because they're very fun and they influenced a lot of modern writers. I think I'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching. And with that, I'll see you next time.